Good to see you, Vance, by the way. We didn't,
Ian, how's it going?
oh, never better.
As well.
Everything's good. How's the new home?
Good. Actually, most of the stuff is done. Actually, it's all done. Just a couple of little things that we have to do over the holidays, or hopefully before the holidays, but just little things. It's pretty well 99.999% done. So it's all good.
Well, congrats.
Thank
Okay.
you. How's everything going with you?
Big thumbs up for me, but I think Cole wants to rock and roll, so I'll shut up.
Well, we're all set, Cole.
All right, perfect. We have most of the people here are either joining or connecting right now, I believe. So we will begin. I would like to first start off by acknowledging that the land of which our club gathers is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous peoples. So first, I'd like to thank Vance and Ian for being with us tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cole. I am the president of the Brock Young Liberals Club here at Brock University. And well, wherever you may be, because a lot of people aren't actually on campus or in Niagara this year because of the obvious. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite our other executives to introduce themselves. With us today, we have Mackenzie and Caitlin. So Mackenzie, if you'd like to start off, just brief introduction of yourself. Oh, hold on. I think.
You're on mute.
All right. Hi guys, I'm Mackenzie. I'm the treasurer of the club this year, and I'm a third year business communication student at Brock. And then Caitlin.
Perfect. We may have actually lost Caitlin. I don't see her on here anymore. Oh no, she's here. She's having some issues with her mic, so no worries. We will move on. Caitlin, if you are able to unmute, just please interrupt me. Okay. So with that, again, thank you, Vance and Ian, for being with us today. We really appreciate it. For those of you who don't know, Vance is currently the Member of Parliament for Niagara Centre, a riding that encompasses South St. Catharines, Thorold, Welland, and Port Colborne. And Ian was the federal candidate in the last election for Niagara West, and we're hoping again in the next election. Fingers crossed. So thank you guys for being here. Welcome. First off, I would just like you, if you guys could just give us a brief introduction on yourself, maybe talk a little bit about how you got into politics. We'll start off with you, Ian.
All right, thanks a lot, Cole. And thanks for everyone for attending and for organizing this. It's huge that you folks are doing this and participating and wanting to get in touch with Vance, who knows so much about what's going on the Hill, and maybe me, if you want to hear about what it's like to run in a heavily contested riding. Just Cole, really quickly, how long is this whole process, just so I know how much to talk or not?
Sure. So I think we have an hour booked up, but I don't think we will go that long.
Okay, well, I'll keep it really short. So everyone, I'm Ian, and then so I live in Grimsby, and I ran in the 2019 election for the Liberal Party of Canada, and sort of my background was originally military, so I was in the Navy reserves for 10 years, and then I switched to criminal defense law, and I just actually got back from the jail, and just in time for this, seeing a few of my clients there, so that is why I have a little formal attire on. And a bit about me, why I got into politics was because I think, like a lot of you, I want to see some changes for our generation and help make Canada the place I know it can be. It's already a great place, but there's room for improvement. So that's my spiel.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. Vance?
Thanks, Cole, and as well, thank you to everybody that came out tonight to discuss some issues that are happening on the Hill right now, but also other issues, provincial, municipal, things of that nature that are of interest to you. Born and raised in Port Colborne, went to school in Welland at Notre Dame, took a full ride down in the States for hockey, studied business and law, came back, took over a family business, opened up 2 other businesses, got into municipal government early on in my mid-20s, became a councillor, then mayor. Was mayor for 14 years before I ran in 15 to become the member of parliament. Why did I get involved? Simple. Don't talk about it, do it. You know, we always have something to say about something, and it's easy to complain, but to make yourself available, especially in a public fashion, to do some of the things and put forward some of the solutions that sometimes otherwise a lot of us just talk about, was the reason why I got involved. There was a few problems that were happening here in Port Colborne that I didn't like, I had opinions on. So instead of carrying on and complaining and screaming and yelling at whoever was close to me at the time, I decided, you know, the heck with it, I'm gonna get involved and try to do something about it. So I did that and got addicted to it. Quite frankly, it was something that I really enjoyed, being part of the solution versus the problem. And with that, what came from that was a lot of satisfaction from my early on days at being an athlete, quite frankly, and always being very competitive, but more so working within a team environment, and found it very satisfying that it wasn't all about me and what I was doing, but it was about us and what we were doing. And you know, when I say us and we, I mean everybody, not just the people that were directly around me with respect to my council or staff, and people that had family, friends, but also people like you, the youth, seniors, and everybody. And the bottom line is that when we all pitch in, as you're seeing now, for example, with COVID, you know, everyone's doing their part, and it becomes very satisfying, especially when you start recognizing those outcomes. And you know, we live in Canada, and one thing Canada is very well known for, 2 things actually, is grit. You know, getting your hands dirty, getting down to it. Using a hockey analogy, getting in the corners, and sometimes, you know, losing a tooth or getting a black eye. But you know what? As long as the puck goes in the net, that's the main thing. And when we work as a team, we work as a country. That's in fact what we can do together, and we're seeing the results of that, especially within the last 5 years.
Great. Well, you both have fairly different backgrounds. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about how your experiences and how your backgrounds have helped you not only get involved in the political world, but even actually influence things or help you overcome some of those obstacles that would get you into the political world. Maybe we'll start with Vance, yeah. Or Ian.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Ian.
Sure. So yes, my background is not nearly as decorated as Vance's, but I can tell you that the military has been very helpful for me, especially. I noticed in the riding I run in, that was more noticed by the voters than any legal background. So if any of you are thinking of joining the reserves, I highly recommend it. You can do your school while you do it. But in terms of how my background has helped, I would say that any background that lets you deal with vulnerable people. So if any of you are thinking of teaching or dealing with that sort of thing, I'm finding that a lot of policies that we're being taught, that we're talking about, are essentially how to help those who are in need, right? We don't talk about how to protect the rich. We're talking about how to help those who are in need. So anything that gets you in contact with them, that demography, is extremely good to have ties with those communities. And so in my work in defense, I just came back from the jail, like I said, I'm sort of with them a lot, you know, so in seeing those problems that those people are experiencing. So that helped me, I think, in terms of what was important to me. And that's actually why I joined the Liberals rather than the Conservatives, which is traditionally thought of as more military minded, which is actually not the case. But that's would be my answer.
Great. Vance?
Well, I'll try and dance this quickly. You know, it's 2 things. One, yes, it is your background. I'm not going to get to that in a second, but ultimately personality. It's what you have right here, your heart, your passion, being a caring person, being more empathetic instead of apathetic. That's the prerequisites to public office. You got to understand that, you know, we're in the business to serve people, and people aren't widgets. They're not all the same. It's not like making 1,000 pens that are all identical. You're dealing with people, and people are different. You gotta balance out and consider the consequences of each and every decision that you make, and you have to respect that. It's not about you, it's about the seat you're sitting in. And that seat, it has an expectation attached to it from the people that you represent, and that is to be, again, to consider the consequences of each and every decision. My background, you know, I had a very strict and disciplined upbringing with respect to it. We did, whether it was with sport. Again, you know, it was a team environment. It was about team. It was about us. You know, leave your attitude, leave how you feel about somebody at the door. Once you get into that dressing room, you're a family, and you're in it together. And you ensure that, you know, win or lose, you're doing it together. My business background has helped me out greatly, more so with respect to an attitude. Whether it was at the municipal level, and obviously the municipal level helped me out of where I am today, especially with that experience with respect to how government works dealing directly with people. Levels of government can sometimes be a bit insulated for people, especially at the federal level up in Ottawa. But the one thing that business did give me, and I'll say this bluntly, if you don't mind, is how to separate the bullshit, the BS. And just get down. You know, I'm not here to be in the business of good politics. I'm here to be in the business of good government. Don't play games with me. Don't on the Hill play these political games, whether it's at committee or whether it's on the floor. I don't have time for it. I don't have patience for it. My mission up there is to deal with my riding. If it doesn't have something to do with my riding, don't bother me. It's all about Niagara. It's all about getting it done. And there's too many games. There's too much politics that happens at upper levels of government, regardless of what country you're in. And sometimes what ends up happening is, and I see it all the time up in the Hill, especially with the opposition party, is the fact that they basically place their own agendas, their own politics, their own, you know, it's about them, about me, and they put politics ahead of people. And you can't do that. You got to put people ahead of politics, and put your agenda aside, put your party aside, put your leader aside, put, you know, all that aside, and deal with and balance out the interests and the decisions that you're going to make on those interests on people. And that's the bottom line. And when you inject or you instill that into the way you do things, the end result is not only the obvious in terms of the proper decision making, but also you inspire, you attempt to then therefore change the course of what traditionally is politics. And, you know, albeit you're always issue driven and task driven, you know, you got to lead by example. And the more you do that, the more hopefully in the future politics will sort of go the way it should, which is people, and ensure that you're best looked after versus agendas and politics and games and all the, I call it parliamentary theatrics that you see up in Ottawa. And that's essential. And I'll tell you, and I'll end off by saying this. As much as I'm doing at my age and after 24 years of being in public office, I'll say to you, you're the next generation. And it's going to be incumbent as well as up to you to really right that ship into the right area. We see a lot more of it across the border, and I think all just experienced that within the last month on what that can do if the ship goes awry. But it's also it's going to be up to you guys to finish that course and ensure that politics is where it should be, and where it should be is in the hands of the people.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome. Thank you, Vance, for that. I did two things I forgot to mention, actually, sorry, at the beginning of this. First, just a quick disclaimer, this is being recorded and will be posted on our social media, as well as for any of our participants. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we will hopefully be able to get to them before the end of this video. So yeah, if you have any questions for Vance or Ian, just throw them in the chat and I'll try to monitor those as well as I can. Okay, question for you, Ian, specifically. Obviously, it's no surprise that you're in a very heavily contested riding, and you fight like hell when you're there. But what motivates you to keep knocking on doors, keep talking to constituents, talking to the residents about the issues, knowing that?
So it's fun, Cole. I like to hear what's important to people, right? So a lot of the times in our day-to-day life, we have superficial conversations, but when you can go to a door, and I encourage each and every one of you, if you're thinking about it, doesn't matter what level, municipal, federal, provincial, whatever, if you want to run, just do it, because you know, I had a law practice. I had to put it on hold for 3 months. I'm still catching up, trying to make ends meet, and I'd do it again because it's worth it just to be able to go to the door. It gives you a license to ask people about what's really in their hearts. And that is something that is, to me, was fantastic. So that it was sort of a pleasure to do. I had people like Vance coming to my riding all the time just to help out. People like Caitlin were with me every day. So it was a lot of fun. We had fun. Hey, Caitlin, thumbs up for fun. I know you're muted. Thumbs up for fun. Way up. So that's why, Cole. And also because I think in my heart of hearts, I know it's the right thing to do. Niagara West, I mean, I don't like to be negative, but I do think that there's some anachronistic or wrong views, especially on women's rights right now in our riding. And it doesn't sit with me. And like Vance said, you can't stand on the sidelines forever. And I think that's what you folks are doing here by coming to this meeting and by doing things all the time. I know you're constantly, you know, activating for the good. That's what keeps me going.
That's awesome. No, and the reason I ask is because, I mean, we're all young people, you know, getting our foot in the door of politics, and it can be intimidating, especially in those heavily contested ridings, to knock on the doors, to make those calls, because you don't know what you're going to hear on the other end. But it is really, I guess, uplifting to hear that those conversations can still be very positive and still be very very fruitful. So that's awesome. So Vance, for you, what is a change that you played a role in that you're most proud of in your elected life?
Oh, yeah, you're really making me dig deep here. You know, it's one of the things that I learned early on in municipal government is again, and I'm going to keep hitting this, guys, it's team. You know, it's as a mayor, it's always your ugly mug they see in the face or in the paper, and your comments they always read in the paper as the mayor. And you know, but I made it very clear to my team, to my council, to my staff, to our team, the community's team, that it wasn't me, it was about everybody had a part to play. You know, again, using hockey as an analogy, by the way, that was my sport, guys, so I'm sorry. But, you know, using hockey as an analogy, you know, you can't go on the ice without a goaltender. You can't go on the ice without a centerman or a winger or a defenseman. You got to go as a complete team. Albeit sometimes you end up in the box, and that's kind of hard. But you know, that's how you win the game, and it's no different. And I learned that early on, that in fact, that's you know, that's the way it has to work. That's the environment you have to work in. So with that, I really pushed that, and I think other people got it, and the environment got better as years went on within our local area here, as well as throughout the region when I was on regional council. I can go on about projects, you know, the Valet Center, the downtown area, the promenade, you know, the skateboard park, the events that we did, Canal Day, all that stuff. I can go on and on about that. And most of you know all about that here locally. Federally, I think, you know, let's face it, guys, I had a real hard time making the jump. You know, I had a real tough time jumping from, you know, a comfortable position in Port Colborne as the mayor, where you know, it was like family. Everybody I was working with, and as well as the community, it's one big family. And it was very difficult. But the problem that I had was I was hitting the ceiling. I was a mayor of a city of 18,000 people in a region of about 500,000 people, which isn't very big in the bigger scope of things nationally. So, you know, we weren't getting everything we wanted. We were hitting the ceiling, and I kept hitting it. It drove me nuts. So finally, I recognized that, you know, it's time to move on. I have to get over that ceiling and have more resources available to me, which I did. And I was fortunate to be elected in 2015. And what's happened since is, you know, we're able to get, you know, the establishment of being recognized as a foreign trade zone in Niagara. We were able to put the Niagara Port strategy in place, which deals with a multimodal economic hub we were able to put forward the Great Lakes Group Task Force that deals with economic, environment, and social, those pillars that attach themselves and issues that attach themselves to the Great Lakes as per those pillars. And again, the list goes on, and I can sit here for hours. But again, it's not me. It's not about me. It's about us. And when I say us, by the way, folks, I don't mean just us as liberals. And I have to give credit to where credit's due, because I do a lot of work with the Conservatives. I do a lot of work with the NDP, and most recently, a little bit of work with the Bloc and even the Green Party, but mostly with the Conservatives and NDP. And we made a great announcement today with single event sport betting, whereby, you know, it's going to bring a lot of jobs, sustain a lot of jobs in Niagara, especially because we're a destination-driven destination, and with that, world class. And, you know, I worked on that issue with Kevin Waugh from the Conservatives, with Brian Massey from the NDP. So again, I go back to what I originally said. It's not about me. It's not about just the Liberals. It's not about, you know, just, you know, the federal government. All of us working together, and we have to think more that way, because let's face it, at the end of the day, we have 338 ridings in Canada, and those 338 ridings, regardless of who their representative is and what party they may belong to, must, and I underline and I bold must, be treated equally. And everyone needs something. Everyone has to have a piece of that pie, and they deserve it, regardless of who represents them. And I'm big on that. So, you know, when it comes to, you know, that the question that you're asking me, Cole, it's not just about, you know, individual projects, which I've been a part of many in 24 years, but it's more so the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is the how to the what. The what is the facility. The what is the issue. The what is the foreign trade zone. The what is the single sport betting. But it's the how. That's the most important part, is how you get there. And how you get there is team, working together, ensuring that we're Canada. And we have 338 ridings in Canada. We all have our interests. We all want a piece of the pie, and we should darn well get it. But we have to work in that environment. So if there's one thing that I'm trying to do at the federal level, is not just individual issues and work for the riding, but park the politics, park the games, park the BS, and let's just get down to work and get the job done.
No, fair enough. That is good. Next question. This comes from one of our members. This one's for both of you. What is a change, if you could get to Ottawa right now, if you're in Ottawa right now, and you were granted some sort of power to make one change, what is something that you would love to see happen? It could be any policy, social, any sort of issue that you would love to make a change on right now. I'll start off with Ian.
I asked Justin Trudeau this question once when we were in a bar, and well, it wasn't really a bar; it was an event with a bar. But he said if he could do one thing, he'd love to see more of the funds that go towards childcare, right? Childcare support. So I agree with him there. I would like to see more universal daycare programs, and that's something the Liberals are planning to roll out. So that's what I would do. Awesome.
I mean, universal daycare is something that has been an issue for a long time. Daycare is very unaffordable, especially in this province. And so that's great. Vance, same question. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
I mentioned earlier, you know, just park darn politics. You know, just let's just get down to work. You know, and I can't emphasize that enough, because you know, I come from the municipal sector or municipal government, and you know, I'm used to walking into the Sobeys or walking into the arena or on the basketball court or down the street or going to a theater or going to a school and talking to moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents, kids, and young adults like you are, and hearing straight up face to face, one-on-one, you know, and there's no BS. It's just getting down to an issue, whether it be a pothole in front of their house, or whether it be something that's happening in a park or an organization, or, you know, like, let's just get to it. And so when I get to the federal level, and I tell you guys, it's painful sometimes. You know, just sit the question period. It's 100% parliamentary theatrics. It's staged, it's planned, you know, it's all the above, and it's painful. And that just drives me nuts. We have to work closer together, and we have to be task driven to ensure that you're being dealt with. Now, to go to specifics, there's no question that farmer care and child care and basic income are top priorities. When it comes here to Niagara, it's economy. Let's face it, my riding lost over 5,000 jobs literally overnight. Literally. Take a look in Thorold, the two mills, the two pulp and paper mills, and Hayes Dana, and Welland. You got Lakeside Steel, you got Gencor, you got Stelco, John Deere, and the list goes on. So there's the economic side in terms of trying to gain that back. Are we going to gain that back like we had before? No, you're not going to have another big, huge 1,000 employee plant open up. But you have to concentrate on the supply chain that feeds those plants internationally. So the whole concept is to use a layered approach. The first layer is establishing an economic population that's a heck of a lot bigger than Canada is. Canada's 38 million people. So how do we compete? Well, our trade agreements, CETA, CPTPP, the new NAFTA, and the many other agreements that we have with other countries, now has placed us in an economic population of 1.8 billion people. It's pretty big. So the next layer now is, after you establish that economic population where people are now going to see Canada as a player, is then start preparing your overall economic strategy. And you do that based on the strengths that you have in individual jurisdictions. Here in Niagara, we're a trade corridor. We have the canal, we have road, we have rail, we have air. We're with 1 day's drive of over 44% of North America's annual income. And 1 day, you can drive to Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, Boston, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Detroit, Indiana, Chicago, Montreal, Toronto. And when you can do that, and then align that with water, vis-a-vis the canal, St. Lawrence Seaway, and rail and air. And by the way, with CETA, and CPTPP, anything and everything that goes out of the Midwest or into the Midwest, US or Canada, has to come through the Welland Canal. So the second part is to prepare that infrastructure and to make sure it's up to date, and prepare the workforce, and also work with institutions like Brock University and Niagara College to best be able to do that. Then there's the environmental side. The condition of the Great Lakes, phosphorus, nutrient, high water levels, shoreline erosion, shoreline protection, and the list, invasive species, and the list goes on. And then our environment when it comes to climate change. And then there's the social part of it. Ensuring that as Canadians, we have equality, and it's equitable. With respect to what Ian mentioned earlier, and feeding that is childcare and basic income and pharma care and care for seniors and long-term care, which leads me to my last point. The only way we can accomplish that, and yes, I'm going to say it again, team, but not only team in terms of our communities at our level of government, but also team with working with all levels of government, regardless of what party may be in power at any given time. So it's incumbent upon us as a federal, provincial, and municipal levels of government to once again work together to ensure that we leverage each other, because when somebody walks away from the table, they also walk away with their resources, including financial. But if we all come to the table, we're leveraging financial resources and all other resources that we have available to us from that level of government. Team, and that's key.
Well, the takeaway from Vance is clearly teamwork, which is no understatement. Obviously, a very important part of all aspects of life, whether it's politics, business, anything like that. So, moving on. The pandemic, we can't not talk about COVID-19. Obviously, it is probably the biggest thing affecting our lives right now, other than potentially climate change. But that's besides the point for now. So what is the biggest change, first of all, that you guys have seen with the pandemic, and how can we, as liberals, how can we as political enthusiasts continue to engage with citizens or with residents, with our neighbors, with our friends, through the pandemic? I'll start off with you, Ian.
Sure. So I can tell you in the court systems around Niagara, the biggest thing I've noticed is a huge spike in drug use, homelessness. There's tent cities popping up everywhere, and those are the people I deal with regularly. So I think as people who are involved in politics, interested in activism, I think what we can continue to do is hope, and we're already seeing this in the Liberal government. I'm very proud of our government. Is hope that they're not turning a blind eye to that, and they're not. You can see the new policies that have just come out about the subsidies for rent and so forth. These are going to be hugely helpful. Policies revolving around mental health, extremely important. So I would just say continue to, like I say, run for office. Support those who do run for office if you believe in them for those policies, and that's how you can help. And there's also always phone banks that are going on all the time. That's how I'm reaching out to people regularly on a weekly basis. We're just doing calls, and people love chatting about it.
Fair enough. Great. Thanks. And Vance.
You know, I tell you, it's been a hell of a ride the last couple of months. There's no question that you know, every generation goes through a challenge. When you look back in the early part of the last century, you know, you had the First World War, you had the Spanish flu, Second World War, and the next generation. The generation after that, more war, other challenges, and of course, our generation is now seeing this. And you know, you don't want to underestimate or put one over the other, because they're all challenges, and you deal with them as they come before you. You know, you realize that in life in general, and you know, you got to count on each other. You really have to rely and lean on each other, and again, the values of our government is simply put, you know, we got your back. We're not going to let anybody fall through the cracks. When it comes to security, you know, we want to look after homelessness. We want to look after food security. We want to look after people simply just having the ability to pay their bills, you know, and keep a living, you know, food on the table, bills paid, and a roof over their heads. So, you know, easier said than done, but we're trying to do that through the programs we're putting in place. And then there's safety. You know, we want to ensure that the health and safety of people are being looked after. You know, mental health and physical health, and when it comes to obviously COVID, but other challenges, and some of which are underlying. Thirdly is, and I think this is equally as important as the above, is to ensure that the people that are providing those are well looked after. Our emergency services, our essential workers. You know, we can't take them for granted. We can't think that it's just going to be there for us to be looked after. So we have to look after them too, you know, whether it's doctors, nurses, whether it's fire, police, EMS, essential workers. You know, you go to a store, you go to a restaurant, you know, we have to look after each other's backs. And that's what I've noticed in the past months. Equally as important is the economy. And, you know, let's face it, it's a balance, you know, and I have to give the province some credit for that balance that they're trying to strike, because again, I go back to what I said in my initial comments. You have to consider the consequences of your decision. And it's not easy, especially right now, because, you know, you go into lockdown, you have people's livelihoods being affected. You know, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a store, you know, whether it's a mall, a retail store, you know, and these are people's livelihoods. So you got to balance that, and that's been a big challenge. I've had a lot of phone calls throughout the last year since this has started. You know, well, almost a year, whereby, you know, we need help. You know, you got the hoteliers in Niagara Falls, you got the restaurants in Welland, you got, you know, a clothing store in St. Catharines, you have the travel agents and all over, you know, and everyone's hurting. So, you know, yes, we can bring programs forward, but we also have to be, I don't like using the word creative. I guess we have to be diligent and ensure that, you know, I guess I can use the word creative, that, you know, you think outside the box, and therefore you try to have a decision that may benefit here, also have other benefits to other areas versus just one area. So it's been very difficult to do just that, to really sort of, you know, I guess elasticize the decision-making process, so that therefore you're not just capturing one sector or one individual or one area, you're actually trying to, you know, to do it so that it actually captures a lot more people in one policy or one program. But it's been very difficult. But I have to give a lot of credit to the folks working together at all levels of government. They're getting it. There's still water getting through the cracks, but we just got to work that much harder to ensure that we plug them all up.
Yeah, fair enough. That's very good. So I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing my voice now. I do have a few more questions, but I do want to take a question that we did get in the chat. The first one comes from Hamza. If you would like, you can, I think I have to request you to unmute, and then you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Cole. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So my question is regarding the recent increase in immigration from 1 million to 1.2 million over the next 3 years. So I was wondering, like, what kind of immigrants will you be accepting? Either it's economic or like immigrants through family reunification program, or if you can, like, like answer it in detail, like would that put a unfair burden on our health system, because the immigrants who are, like, going in our health department asking for what do you say, like medical or, like, or medical checkup or something? Whoever can answer.
Sure,
Well, what I can say off the bat is it's not a broad brush. It's a case by case in terms of the immigration files that we get individually. I will say, from a broader sense, let's face it, we're all immigrants. Unless you're native, we're all immigrants. Our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents came from somewhere other than Canada. Again, unless you're Indigenous, that's just the way it is. That's how Canada was built. That's how Canada grew. That's how Canada survived, especially with respect to our economy. This house that I'm living in now was built by Italians and Hungarians that moved in here to Port Colborne, as well as the trades that attach to it. And that goes everywhere, not just housing, but it goes into plants, it goes into, all the trades and, pipe fitters, steam fitters, boiler makers, and the list goes on. The second part of it is the contribution that our immigrants make to our character, our personality. It's who we are. It's who we are in Canada. And going to your point about, the stress it puts on our system. Well, the stress it may put on our system, it also helps it. Like I revert back to my other comments about the economy. And then, of course, the character and the personality, the family, the community, which it's all about, and the values that we live by. Yes, and there's no doubt that the more people that we have here living in Canada, regardless of where they come from, it's going to put a stress on our healthcare and in all, what we have to offer throughout the services that we provide. But an immigrant comes into Canada, they become Canadian. That's the bottom line. They become Canadian, and they, when I see immigrants come in, and I happen to bump into them a year, 2 years, because I do keep close touch to them. I go to a lot of citizenship ceremonies, a lot of them, and I do it deliberately, because I want to see the people that want to be Canadian, and they're ecstatic. They are absolutely ecstatic on becoming a Canadian. Like, we are very well looked at internationally, because we got one of the greatest, if not the greatest, countries in the world. So then I touch base with them a year, sometimes 2 or 3 years later, and I see they're owning their own businesses, they're tradespeople, they're contributing. So quite frankly, they deserve to get what we get. And just because we've been here our entire lives and they haven't, doesn't mean any different. Because remember this, there was a day where your great grandparent or parent or grandparent was in that same position. And look what they became. Look what they became. And look what you became because of them. And that's being Canadian. That's Canada.
Great. That, first of all, awesome question. And then a great answer. I know, Ian, it's a little bit harder for you to answer, but I would love to hear your opinion on the question.
Sure, really quick, Cole. Yeah, thanks for the question, Hamza. I had that a lot at the doors in Niagara West. There is a stigma around whether or not immigrants burden the healthcare system or the welfare system more than those who are born in Canada. It's actually totally false. So just for the record, if you look in Statistics Canada, there's no excess burden from inviting more people in. And frankly, I agree with Vance. When I go around Niagara, it's absolutely not an immigrant or Canada-born situation in the healthcare system. It's divided based on need, and that's how it should be.
Great, that's awesome. As well, I believe Mark had a question, but I think before we do that, I think Caitlin just was finally able to figure out her mic issue, and she would like to say hi and introduce herself. Well, I think you're still muted.
There we go. There was issues getting me set up as a co-host, but I'm here. We're good. Hi, everybody. I'm Caitlin. Pronouns are she, her. I am the secretary for the Brock Young Liberals, and I'm also the person who has been annoying a lot of you via emails lately. So just put a face to a name. That's me, always emailing you, always reminding you about things.
And Caitlin has been a phenomenal part of the team for quite some time, and she will be bugging you with a lot more emails as we get more events like this set up with different people, and we'll go from there. So Mark, I think I'll ask you to unmute there, and you can go ahead with your question.
Okay, perfect. I'd just like to start off and say it's a pleasure getting to listen to you guys today. So my question is going to be directed towards Vance, but Ian, if you have anything to add, feel free to chime in. So Vance, I wholeheartedly agree with you that in facing these issues, we need to work together as a team to get the job done. Within that frame of thinking, you having a more like in-depth point of view and you being able to see firsthand, what single issue do you feel we're facing most unitedly? And what's an issue we face most dividedly? And in which ways do you think we can bridge that gap?
I think one of the things that, and it's tough to say because everybody has an opinion on it, but I'm going to say it and be blunt about it, is systemic racism. We're seeing across the country, and quite frankly, it's bleeding in from other countries. But people seem to have a bolder voice, and it's almost like they've been let loose with respect to, quite frankly, racism, and it's disturbing. Because that's not what Canada's about, and it goes back to my earlier comments. And you know, we have our values, and you know, I have no problem with people disagreeing. You know, people have disagreements, we debate, you know, we talk, and then we come out to, you know, decisions, and/or we have, you know, we agree to disagree. But when you give opinion or you make comment based on someone's, you know, gender, whether they're LGBTQ2, whether they're the color of their skin, what part of the world they're from, I have a problem with that. And you're going to hear it. You're going to hear that problem. And I've had many of those discussions with people that have called my office, sent me emails, sent me texts, social media. You know, you want to talk to me? Pick up the phone. Don't send me some Facebook message about something, you know, or something like that. Like, come on, you know, pick up the phone and call me. That way we can have a man-to-man or a man-to-woman discussion on the issue that you're talking about. And what really disturbs me the most is when people hide, especially with that issue, with systemic racism, how they hide and they just jab, they throw things out, you know. So that's probably the biggest issue. I think another issue, and by the way, that's very, there's party lines there, and I'll leave it at that. The other issue I think too is I guess it's an overall philosophy on basically taking care of people. Taking care of people, you know, having this, you know, let's face it, I've always been considered and consider myself a bit this way, right from center. And that comes from my business background. You know, I'm constantly talking to a caucus and to the finance department and minister about budgets, but that's a discussion for another time. And I'll leave it at that. But you know, at the end of the day, we're dealing with people. We're dealing with people, and there's a philosophical difference between the parties on just that, on this, versus just putting the hammer down. You know, and in Canada, let's face it, you know, you have two parties that are more than likely, at least in my lifetime, are going to be the only two parties that are going to govern, and they have a great distance between them with respect to that issue or that philosophy. You know, this over here, which makes me a liberal, even though I might be a bit right of center, that's what makes me a liberal, is this. And considering the consequences of the decision that's being made, not just putting the hammer down and saying, you know what, that's it. I'll give you a story, an anecdote. When I was mayor, someone came into my office and said to me, you know, Vance, I love the way you run the city. You run it like a business. And I said to him, I said, actually, I don't. I may run it in a business-like fashion, but I don't run it like a business. Because if I ran it like a business, you wouldn't vote for me. Because the way I run a business is very shrewd and very boom, okay? But in government, you can't do that. You got to pull it back a bit, and you got to consider that consequence because you're dealing with people, and you got to have more of this. And sometimes you can't make that decision that you would otherwise make in a business environment. And it's hard. It's very hard. It's hard in business, but it's even harder when you're doing it in the public sector. You got to have this. You got to have empathy, and you got to remember that some people need it more than others. And you have to have that philosophy that, again, you got to care. Simply put, you got to care. There's nights like, I'll tell you, and a lot of people that work with me know this. When COVID hit, there were nights I didn't sleep because I knew the businesses that were having trouble. I knew the person that couldn't put food on the table. And that's hard. And that's the way you got to think. That's the way you got to feel. And that way the decisions that you make are effective and they have better outcomes.
Great. Awesome. Awesome question, Mark. Ian, any thoughts on that?
It's supposed to say pass.
Okay, perfect. So we'll move on to another question that was in the chat. Anna is having a little bit of difficulties with her mic, so I will just read for her. She says, hi, Vance and Ian. A pleasure to meet both of you. I was just wondering if you could provide your opinions in respect to the 1% wealth tax, as well as the current state of boil water advisories across Indigenous communities in Canada. Looking forward to hear your insight. So I think we'll start off with Ian on that one.
I'll be quick because I'll just answer one of those two. So Anna, thanks for the question. So my opinion would be 1% wealth tax makes total ethical sense. And if you have any more questions as to the motivation behind that, then we can do that some other time. Vance?
Yeah, the 1% wealth tax is I agree with. There's no question that you know, again, it's Canada, and our values are, you know, people do good, and you balance that. People that are in need of help, then, you know, they get it, and it's more affordable, and it goes to the budgetary discussion, especially with respect to you know, our deficits and our debt. And if I can digress to that in a second, I would appreciate it, Cole, because I want to get that in. Because it's a discussion. It goes back to Mark's question about some of the philosophical differences that we have, different parties. But, you know, going to the Indigenous boil water advisories, there's no question that it has to be dealt with, period. Bottom line, underline it, bold it, it has to be dealt with. And that's going to take work with the Indigenous communities. Obviously, it's money, it's infrastructure, funding, but as well, it's not just about throwing money at something, but it's also sustainability. So that way, you know, well into the future, they don't find themselves in another problem or the same problem. So, you know, it's incumbent upon us to deal with the different nations, the different areas throughout Canada to deal with that problem. And quite frankly, it has to be dealt with. And we are. We've put a lot of billions of dollars to water, wastewater, storm systems, roads, you know, utilities in general. But there's a lot more needed, and it's not going to be an overnight fix. But we are chipping away at it a heck of a lot more than previous government. Well, like night and day compared to previous governments. But I want to go, if you don't mind, Cole, I do want to touch on the budget, because it's always an issue, and it has been an issue of late with people saying, where are we getting this money from? Future generations are going to be, strapped. Your generation, the generation after you, and the generations after you will be strapped with a high debt or deficit or debt. The bottom line, folks, is that, yeah, we have been running deficits. There's no question about it. And obviously this year, the highest, because of the circumstances what we find ourselves in. But we have, like a business, and this is the business of politics. I'm sorry, the business of government, not the business of politics, the business of government. So we got to think ahead, and we got to think strategically ahead in two areas. One, there's no doubt that tough decisions are going to have to be made. And I say tough because I go back to what I said earlier about that balance. It's people. And you really don't want to, when you're making those decisions, those tough decisions, you don't want to just say slash, cut, and burn, but at the same time, you got to prioritize. And I think we have to recognize that there's new ways of doing the business that we're in, number one. Number two is, cutting out a lot of the, I'm not going to say duplication. I'm not going to say the excess, or what I will say though is the way of doing business in terms of partnering more. And instead of having 4 organizations all competing for that one funding program, they may want to think about working together closer so that it's only one application for that funding program. So I'm thinking out loud here, but those are the things that I propose and I propagate and I talk to people about when we're actually dealing with different organizations in different sectors. The second thing I want to say is this. Pick up a book called Boom Bust and Echo, David Foote. Not sure if you ever read it, but pick it up and read it. Okay, it's all about demographics, the economy, anticipating what people are going to buy, what they're going to do, habits, just basically based on demographics. Now, right now, we have a huge demographic called the boomers. Okay, and there's no question that that demographic is going to shrink over time because of age. And so you got a big bubble right now. And that bubble is big, and that bubble also creates a lot of stress on especially healthcare, long-term care, services such as that, which, by the way, are the most expensive in the budget, especially at the provincial level. Well, as that bubble shrinks and becomes this, there's going to be a net difference, okay? And that net difference will give us an opportunity to look at putting more money to the debt and hopefully creating less deficit. I look at what Paul Martin did back in 2003. That's what I want to see, leading up to the next, say, 3 to 5 years coming out of the COVID crisis, is no deficits, the best we can do, and of course create some surpluses to then put those surpluses towards, obviously maintaining services and enhancing services where need be, but also in bringing on that debt as best we can based on the advantages that we have, whether it be demographics or, again, those tough decisions that we have to make.
Great. Awesome. And then I do believe Rami has a question. I'll just unmute you now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for coming here. So I just have a question for both of you. What are your views, because we're talking about like debt and deficits, what are your views when it comes to deficits in general? Do you think like deficits are bad? Because like I'm an economics major, and sometimes like, deficits are really, really good for an economy because, it reduces, homelessness. It could it could increase like the welfare of like the entire economy and everyone in it. So I'm just wondering, let's say like during this pandemic, do you think the deficits that happen are bad deficits per se, or like the debt will be accumulated, or they're like good one, or is it like in between? Thank you.
Go ahead, Ian. I've talked enough. You can take this one.
Sure, I'll be quick. So my philosophy. This is a question that gets asked a lot too. So the philosophy that I subscribe to is, Rami, is like if Canada was like a human body and we're all cells in the body, right? You got your liver cells and your fingernail cells, and those are like the different kinds of people in a country, but we're all part of the same country. So I would say the word deficit could be misleading. What about the word investment? So you folks are in school, right? So you're probably taking on a debt, but it's not a real debt, it's an investment, because that money is going to pay forward, 10 times, 20 times in the future. It's going to improve your quality of life and the work you can do. So deficits are great if they're investments. And this is exactly what Vance is talking about when he's talking about these different projects. And that's really, in my view, that's what, if you know how maple syrup, if you boil it down for long enough, it turns into toffee. That's what government is to me. How to use the tax money to invest it. And so your other part of the question was, how is the deficit now? The deficit now is more of a damage control deficit, isn't it? It's like a tornado came through Canada called COVID, and is everything the government can do, people like Vance are doing, to throw up barriers everywhere to stop the roof from flying off, like it has in the States, like it has in Italy. So we're very lucky to have people like Vance doing that. And of course, there's going to be some collateral damage, broken windows, but it's the best we can hope for.
Great, thank you.
I think Rami, your question is an awesome question, and I think it really goes to the core of what government is in the business to do. You know, when you look at the private sector, when I was in business, if I had, you know, Algoma Central, I had Canada Steamship Lines, or I had FedNav, or I had a company like that, I was in the shipping business, and I had them say to me, you know, Vance, I'm going to give you all the ships that to supply. You have to do it all over Canada, or not Canada, but say Ontario, Quebec, and you're ready to go. Well, obviously now I have to build a bigger building. I have to buy more trucks. I have to hire more people. I have to put more freezers in, more coolers in, buy more stock. So my stock would go from holding $1.5 million worth of stock into about $4 or $5 million worth of stock. It's a 24/7 business. So you got insurance, you got WSIB, you got all your paperwork that you have to do. Well, you know, to grow, you're not going to be able to go to the bank and say, give me the money, and then walk away with a big, you know, envelope full of money and go do all that. You know, you got to find investors. It's probably the bank, and yes, you're going to create a debt, and you're going to finance that debt over time. Okay, government's no different. You know, government, our business is you. Our business is the store down the street. Our business is the hotel in Niagara Falls. Okay, so essentially, we're investing, and Ian hit it bang on. It's not deficit; it's investing. And you were right, Rami, when you said, you know, it could be good at times, because at times we need that investment, sometimes more than others. Hence the reason why you have deficits that are higher than some other years. And quite frankly, like a business, even like your home, for example, you know, when you buy a car or you buy a house, you get a mortgage or a loan, you know, and you work to pay that off, whether it's a business or your home. You just got to make sure you don't go over your means, which is that balance that we have to ensure that we maintain. So when we go into deficit, that's what it is. We're investing in you. We're investing in business. We're investing in economy. We're investing in infrastructure. And I'll say this lastly. When it comes, for example, one of the biggest investments that we made in the last 5 years is the $180 billion that we put towards infrastructure. Make no mistake about it. When municipalities send out their tax bills every year, and their water bills quarterly, okay, there's a capital component attached to that, whether they're financing a debt under their operating or it's their actual capital budget. And that lands on the shoulders of a property taxpayer or your water bill. When you own a home, you got a tax bill and you got a water bill. So when the federal government, in partnership with the provincial government, is able to give a municipality, for example, the city of Welland, $12 million for a combined sewer overflow project. That's when they put storm sewers in the ground. Okay, that means the property taxpayers and the water bills will be mitigated because they won't have to pay for that project. I'm not going to say they're going to go down because that's up to the city, but the property taxpayer and or the water bills don't have to pay for that project, because one of three things is going to happen. One, the project just simply won't be done. So that 90-year-old system would never get fixed. Two, taxes will go up and water bills will go up. Or three, they will be stuck over time, okay, in debt, okay, financing that debt over time, which does two things. Again, it lands on the shoulder of the property taxpayers and the water bills, but equally as important, it takes away from other projects that can be done. So it's also creating room for other infrastructure that can be done. And that was my point earlier about the how. And the how is trying to leverage that dollar so it goes further in terms of benefit. And in this case, the benefit is to the property taxpayer and the water bills. So, you know, yes, we're going into deficit and it's adding on to the debt, but you can see the advantages because of it. And quite frankly, you can see the country that we live in because of it. The key, however, is, and this is the key, as I was saying earlier, is over time to bring that deficit down based on, you know, it goes to taxation, it goes to the 1% wealth tax, it goes to a lot of that as factors. But also, the reason why you bring it down is less contribution to the overall debt. And there will be a day we'll get there, okay? But right now, based on the economy the way it's been, based on COVID the way it's been, there are investments that we have to make. Otherwise, people start falling through the cracks, businesses start falling through the cracks. And that's when we start running into problems, because that's when you have that inequality that then goes like this versus that balance.
Great question. I just want to be mindful of time. I know it's 8 o'clock, so I don't want to take up too much more of your guys' time. We really appreciate you guys being here. If you're okay, I think we have 2 more questions and then we can close it up if you guys are okay with that. That's fine? Okay, perfect. So first I'll put it back to Mark. He did have a follow-up question for Ian. Sorry, oh, maybe I have to ask you to unmute. There we go.
Yeah, so quickly, Vance, regarding what you were talking about, I completely agree. As Canadians, we put people first. And I mean, this includes current Canadians and immigrants as well, soon to be Canadians. We focus on the people and we put them first. And I think that's what makes us such a proud, strong, you know, a good, great country. And so my next question though, I'm curious, Ian, I like to think about how, you know, we as people, we face challenges and we grow from them. And so running for a high government office position is, I imagine, is a tremendously challenging thing. So what do you, from your point of view, what was the most challenging aspect of it? And then how did you grow from that?
Good question.
Probably for me, the biggest thing was confidence. And I'm sure maybe even you all have some hesitation about going into the public office thinking maybe I can't do it, maybe I won't succeed, maybe I'll be a failure, but you won't. I can tell you that you overcome that just by getting out there and do it. It's sort of like going to the gym, you know, you're just like, oh, I don't want to do it. But you force yourself out there, you get there and you do great. You do great. You do great for yourself, you do great for everybody. So think of it just like going to the gym and just get out there and do it.
Great. That was a great question. And then last question from Roberto. I will unmute you there.
Hey, so yeah, this is just a question for, I guess for the both of you guys, right? Because like, originally I'm from Waterloo, so Waterloo region there. And then, so I grew up in a very diverse, you know, city. And like, so, you know, as I grew up, I faced, you know, different challenges. And you guys have already touched up on this subject, but the one thing that I think that when it comes to terms of immigration is assimilation, and how much of a challenge that is also for being for first generation parents, you know, coming into the country, being actually, you know, facing a cultural shock, you know, that's very different. And then when our country is very liberal, right, when in terms of, you know, of freedom of speech, and I think that, you know, a lot of people are very opposed, you know, when it comes to, like, you shouldn't say things that will, you know, harm people. So a lot of people, you know, believe that freedom of speech should be protected, right, which in turn comes into hate speech, right? And then like so one of the things is like if you guys could guess how do you, like, you know, make assimilation easier while at the same time trying to protect freedom of speech?
That is
No, Vance, it's all you.
Okay,
good question.
You know, I'll tell you, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's about values. It's ensuring that we all lead by example, and what I mean by that is that it's how we act. You know, it's how we bring up our families, our children. So that therefore assimilation becomes a lot easier. As you know, actually, to some extent, I thought we were there. Quite frankly, I thought, you know, as I was growing up, we were there. But unfortunately, especially within the last 2 or 3 years, in my view, because it's bled in from other countries, When I say what's bled in is the attitude, the boldness that people have had, and it's bleeding into our country, and it seems like it's an empowerment where people think it's okay now. Well, it's not. Bottom line, it's not, and it just burns my butt to see it happening, because that's not what Canada's about. And so, in direct answer to your question, it's how we as a country, we as a community, we as families, as friends, as neighbors, it's an attitude that therefore makes it easier for those coming into Canada. Now, I'll just go on the other side of the sword, so to speak, with respect to you and how you deal with it. And I feel for people that come in and have to put up with the crap that they get, whether it's at, the grocery store or it's at, a park or something like that. And I see it. I see the posts on social media. I see it in the paper, and it's just total BS. And it just drives me absolutely freaking nuts. And I tell you, if I wasn't in public office, there'd be times where, you'd react in a different way, but you can't. However, thank God you can't, because again,
for the record, he's just kidding. He's not, doesn't really mean that. He's a gentle soul.
I'm gentle, yeah, but it just angers me, and I guess for the most part we just gotta cool it, and lead by example by ensuring that people see us as Canadians acting and reacting the way we are, and then therefore hopefully that'll be a shame to somebody to empower them or to be as bold as they are. But again, I want to go back to the other side, to you and to others that it may happen too. It's tough. There's no question about it. We still see it with our Indigenous community and others, and it's really tough. What I say is lean on your community. Lean on community, lean on friends, lean on family, and hopefully over time, Canada will heal from some of the challenges that we've had, especially in the last 2 years. But it's difficult, and as you can see from my reaction, it really bothers me. It really bothers me because, like I said earlier, there was a time where our grandparents and our great grandparents and our parents we're in that same boat. We're in that same position, and we're from them. So for somebody to act that way, decades later, when their grandparents or parents came over here, is 100% hypocritical. And it's hard. It's very hard. But we're Canadian, and it's not as bad as in other parts of the world. And hopefully we'll heal with some of the things that have been happening, especially of late.
Cool. I just want to add one thing, Cole. I know we're out of time, but for Roberto. So when I was overseas with the Canadian Forces, we have a very multicultural Canadian and how we got treated by local people than the Americans, for example. And so it goes back to what Vance was saying, because as a part of your Canadian soul, you should feel that fury towards racism. You should feel that outrage, just like Vance does. And the way, your second part of your question was how to deal with it, channel it right towards the political engine to make change from the top down. And that's going to be through running for office, supporting those who run for office, even making 5 or 10 phone calls on behalf of a party that supports multiculturalism. It helps because all it takes for evil to survive is for good people to stand by and do nothing. So that's all it takes. So that would be my answer.
That and
if I can, well, I want to leave you with this, and for many of you that have been around me a long time, yes, I'm going to repeat myself, and this is probably something you've heard 200, if not more times, but I'm going to say it because I believe in it, and it's part of my duty, especially in public office, being given a stage, to really, pound this into society, especially folks at your age. And it's simple. It's 2 simple things, and that is, you don't ever underestimate the influence that you have on others, regardless of where you come from, regardless of what color your skin is, regardless of what gender you are, regardless of whatever. You know, don't ever underestimate that influence that you're going to have on others. It can be one word that somebody can hear in the hallway, or one sentence, or one action that can change somebody's life forever. Don't underestimate that influence that you have on others. And secondly, you know, it's not about how big you are, how strong you are, how smart you are, what color your skin is, what part of the world you come from. The person that's going to succeed and make a difference is the person that thinks they can. It's that simple. It's the person that thinks they can. And we as a country, and the values that we've put forward, going back many generations, going back many years, okay? And thank goodness for those people that have started that, and it's been strengthened ever since, based on, you know, us being Canada. Whether it's through war and the veterans, whether it's through actions from people and organizations, volunteers, community, and the list goes on. It's not just about politicians, you know, it's about everybody, business people, and you know, from our faith, and the list goes on. The bottom line is that we're Canadians, we're from Canada. And it's not about the bigger, the stronger, the smarter, the faster person that wins. It's the person that has this, that thinks they can. And don't ever, ever, ever forget that. And don't ever forget or underestimate the influence that you have on others. Because there's going to be a day, that something that you do yesterday is going to help something or someone, or ultimately the country, tomorrow. And you're it. You guys are it. You're next. You're next. And I count on, and I know, but I count on, you guys are going to take it up a notch. You guys are going to raise the bar a lot more than it's been raised from past generations. Past generations went like this. When you guys get in, it's going to go like that. And I'm counting on that. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep getting involved. Don't let anybody hold you back, regardless of whatever they say, do, or whatever. Don't ever let that person or entity or business or issue hold you back. Jump in, make a difference. Thanks, Cole.
Well, thank you, guys. And that is actually a perfect segment into just my last question that I have, very quick. What advice do you have for young people on how we can get involved, how we can have our voices heard?
Join a local association. Join your riding association. Get on the distribution list.
Speak, call, get involved. Let your voice be heard. Don't ever think that I'm just one person, and so I'm not going to say nothing because it won't make a difference. It will. Lead by example, whether it's word, action, working within a team. Get out there. Speak up, because you will make a difference.
Perfect. Well, thank you, guys. Thanks, Ian and Vance, for being with us today. Thank you, everyone who participated. We will be having our first membership meeting. I believe it's next Monday, right, Caitlin? Or is it Friday? I can't remember.
Monday.
Next Monday. So please, everybody come. We'll be having some good conversations, some debate. And again, thank you, Vance. Thank you, Ian, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Cole. And once the pandemic lifts, I want to see every one of you out of the doors with us, Vance or I or Chris Biddle, depending on where you are. Okay? Deal?
Yes. If anybody does want to get involved and help out, you can always reach out to us at the club, and we can hook you up with Ian and with Vance, with Chris, and hopefully Andrea in the falls. Okay.
And if anybody happens to go to Cole's house in the next week or so, make sure you bring a Philadelphia Flyer flag with you and cover that Toronto Maple Leaf flag. Just kidding, Cole. I like the Leafs too.
Hurts my heart, Vance. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a very good night and a very good weekend.
Take care.